After the fluctuation land appeared, Lord Mo Man and Luo Feng arrived at the agreed meeting point. Both of them had already made preparations beforehand. And then Mo Man carried Luo Feng forward by transforming into a wave. Luo Feng found this method extremely wondrous because, unlike traversing space-time or using shadow power, waves could instantly cross enormous distances by connecting different domains. Among the 8 lords, Starlight was the fastest, followed by Mo Man. However, the Infinite Great Snake Clan had the highest travel efficiency because the infinite world allowed them to descend anywhere in the endless primordial space at any time. Although this method could not carry other lifeforms, the infinite snake ancestor could even achieve absolute void through the infinite world, becoming immune to all matter and energy. Luo Feng could only injure it with life cutting, which had a limit to the amount of energy it could contain. After mastering the primordial life and death Dao and the primordial blade path, Luo Feng began considering finding a suitable mysterious land. The Blood Crane territory belonged to the ordinary level, while the infinite world was an intermediate mysterious land. The eternal world, abyss of destruction, and fire prison wall were recognized as the highest level and were considered impossible to refine. As they approached the fluctuation land, Luo Feng began sensing increasingly powerful waves. Mo Man warned him that the fluctuations greatly affected the mind. But Luo Feng was confident in resisting them because his mind consciousness system was an important part of his primordial life Dao. After entering the fluctuation land, Luo Feng was shocked to see enormous materialized waves converging together. Every wave produced a tremendous sound that resonated with his heart, while countless waves interwove into an incomparably magnificent song. The song surpassed even the intense emotional impact of the Mountain of Destruction. While listening, Luo Feng saw visions of spacetime, the evolution of time, worlds being born like seeds, mysterious lands forming, and countless lifeforms appearing, from weak source world creatures and innate primordial life to newly born ancestor-level beings. For world-level primordial life, merely hearing the first note could cause the soul to disintegrate and die. While weaker-willed ancestors might fall into slumber, cultivator lords could resist the song, and if they endured it, the experience could refine their hearts. Luo Feng, however, felt no pain and instead enjoyed the song so much that he remained immersed in it for an entire day before awakening. Luo Feng praised the song as the most incredible one he had ever heard, believing that anyone capable of playing it would become an ancestor solely through that ability. Mo Man explained that it was the song of the entire endless primordial space. Everything within it, including spacetime, all things, mysterious lands, and lifeforms, possessed its own fluctuations. Countless fluctuations gathered together in the fluctuation land and naturally formed the song. The waves changed constantly, about every 100,000 epochs. Their fluctuations reached a peak and completely manifested for approximately 1 epoch before concealing themselves again. Even during its manifested state, only Mo Man could perceive and follow the waves to find the fluctuation land. Mo Man had repeatedly attempted to explore it in the past but had never been able to reach its depths. With Luo Feng's assistance, he hoped to explore its core. Since Luo Feng could not understand the mysteries of the fluctuations, he agreed to provide energy whenever Mo Man needed it. Mo Man then carried Luo Feng deeper into the fluctuation land by transforming into a wave and merging with larger waves. Luo Feng realized that the countless waves formed a super labyrinth, and only someone who mastered the art of primordial fluctuations could decipher it. After reaching a difficult point, Mo Man began burning the energy of his main battle avatar and asked Luo Feng to constantly replenish him so that he could remain at his peak. Since Mo Man's energy reserves were only about 1% of Luo Feng's, this was effortless for Luo Feng. With Luo Feng supplying energy, Mo Man could freely use his techniques and transform himself into a source of fluctuations to forcibly influence the countless waves. As a result, he gradually became like a part of the fluctuation land and was able to advance deeper through it. Eventually, Luo Feng saw a massive object resembling a giant egg, which continuously expanded and contracted while producing countless fluctuations. Mo Man was extremely excited because this was his first time reaching this location. After touching the membrane wall and understanding its structure, Mo Man asked Luo Feng to cut it open with a single blade strike without damaging anything inside. Luo Feng sensed the powerful vitality radiating from the object and determined the membrane wall's thickness. He then used 1/10 of his energy reserve in a highly restrained blade strike. The blade light silently split open the membrane wall without any excess power affecting the interior. Mo Man realized that only Luo Feng could accomplish such a feat in the endless primordial space. As the strike contained energy equivalent to 10 of Mo Man's bodies and fused the power of 2 primordial level paths. Mo Man himself would have needed several techniques to open the membrane without causing internal damage. He immediately brought Luo Feng through the crack, and the membrane completely healed within a few breaths. Inside, they found a vast land with a stone-like heart floating above it and emitting waves. Mo Man excitedly declared that this was the core of the Fluctuation land and that, throughout the history of the endless primordial space, only he and Luo Feng had ever seen it. He then began comprehending the stone heart. When he tried to touch it with a phantom wave hand, the hand silently vanished, demonstrating the stone heart's terrifying power. Mo Man sat down and focused on comprehending it. Having waited for this opportunity for an extremely long time, Luo Feng also released a strand of life and death power to touch the stone heart. But the power was instantly annihilated by terrifying turbulent destruction and an unfathomably vast pressure. He realized that the stone heart was a source of fluctuations and that only someone with profound mastery of fluctuations could comprehend it. Its internal structure also seemed connected to the entire endless primordial space, and touching it subjected his power to a crushing force comparable to a trace of the endless primordial space's power. Luo Feng believed that even if his main battle avatar used all its strength, it would still be destroyed. Therefore, the stone heart could not be forcefully refined. Only through gentle and meticulous comprehension of its mysteries could one hope to refine and control it. Judging from its power, Luo Feng concluded that it was far more powerful than the origin of the Blood Crane territory and estimated that it was at least an intermediate mysterious land. Although Mo Man had reached the core with Luo Feng's help, the actual refinement and control of the Fluctuation land would depend entirely on Mo Man himself. Within the membrane wall of the Fluctuation land, Lord Mo Man focused on studying the stone heart while Luo Feng guarded him. Curious about the stone heart, Luo Feng cautiously sent a strand of thought into it. But the terrifying fluctuations he sensed were beyond his understanding. The stone heart possessed an infinite heaviness that surpassed even the substantiality of Lord Wulin and the initial ancestor. Its mysteries were unrelated to either life or destruction. And unlike the relatively stable secret patterns found in ancestor corpses, its mysteries constantly fluctuated and changed. Luo Feng realized that without understanding the fluctuation path, it was impossible to comprehend these changes, showing that the threshold for understanding the Fluctuation land was extremely high. Even Lord Mo Man, who had mastered the primordial fluctuation Tao, had needed Luo Feng's assistance to reach the core. This demonstrated how difficult it was to enter the cores of powerful mysterious lands. The Land of Eternity, the Abyss of Destruction, and the Fire Prison Wall all possessed extremely difficult to access cores. Compared with them, the Fluctuation land was already relatively accessible because its core could actually be seen. Since Luo Feng could not understand the stone heart, he stopped wasting time and continued perfecting his combat techniques. He had already created 4 techniques by combining the primordial life and death Tao with the primordial blade path and was still developing his 5th technique, the clone battle technique. Meanwhile, the cold-faced youth Starlight determined that Luo Feng and Mo Man had entered the Fluctuation land. Because Mo Man had previously invited him to assist, Starlight understood the periodic cycle of the Fluctuation land's appearance. He had once accompanied Mo Man there, but his temporal techniques were ineffective inside, so his assistance had been limited, and they had ultimately failed to reach the core. Since Luo Feng and Mo Man had remained inside for such a long time, Starlight speculated that they might have reached the core. He believed the Fluctuation land was probably an intermediate mysterious land, although some ancestors might conceal their true methods and the mysterious worlds they controlled. The Infinite Snake Ancestor was currently the only known existence to control an intermediate mysterious world through the Infinite World. Starlight believed the Infinite Snake Ancestor could be considered the first to control such a place and wondered who would become the second. He planned to ask Luo Feng for assistance after Luo Feng's combat techniques became more mature. Starlight had discovered an intermediate mysterious land suitable for himself, as the ordinary mysterious land time star could no longer help him much. Having mastered 2 primordial level paths, his strength had reached a bottleneck. making a suitable intermediate mysterious land extremely important to his future progress. After one era passed, the fluctuation land began to change. Luo Feng noticed that the membrane wall and the enormous fluctuations outside it were gradually becoming illusory and disappearing. The stone heart also became increasingly fragile and transparent, revealing a point of dazzling light that seemed to be a wave. As the fluctuations weakened, the stone heart's outer material completely vanished, leaving only this core point. Luo Feng sent a strand of thought into it and successfully touched the core. At that instant, Luo Feng vaguely perceived the entire endless primordial space from the perspective of fluctuations. In this fluctuation-based world, source worlds appeared insignificant, while powerful mysterious lands became more prominent. He immediately sensed three terrifying fluctuation vortices and identified them as the Abyss of Destruction, the Land of Eternity, and the Fire Prison Wall. From the perspective of fluctuations, the Fire Prison Wall emitted endless heat fluctuations. It stretched across hundreds of world groups, exceeded the width of a world group, and continuously released various highest-level flame powers throughout the endless primordial space. These heat fluctuations influenced countless beings, including life forms born within source worlds and countless innate primordial life forms. The Abyss of Destruction, in contrast, appeared to devour countless fluctuations. It absorbed the hatred, killing intent, unwillingness, resentment, and other negative emotions of endless beings, while these emotions also influenced the will of the Abyss of Destruction. The Land of Eternity appeared to be the key to sustaining the endless primordial space. It balanced the Fire Prison Wall and the Abyss of Destruction, indirectly affecting countless mysterious lands and world groups. Its existence allowed the endless primordial space to continue existing eternally. Without it, the terrifying energies within the endless primordial space would have long produced continuous energy storms, making it impossible for countless weaker lifeforms to survive. Luo Feng therefore realized that the Fire Prison Wall, the Abyss of Destruction, and the Land of Eternity were like the three poles of the endless primordial space. Of the three, he saw no hope of refining the Fire Prison Wall or the Land of Eternity. But the Abyss of Destruction at least provided him with a clear direction. He hoped that he could eventually pass the 7 layers of test and take control of it. As Luo Feng continued sensing the world of fluctuations, the core point, or wave, suddenly disappeared. The fluctuation land vanished completely, and the surrounding area returned to normal time and space. Lord Mo Man explained that the fluctuation land appeared most solid when its fluctuations reached their peak. Once the fluctuations weakened, it rapidly dispersed. At the lowest point of its fluctuation cycle, it might spread throughout the entire endless primordial space. Thus, the fluctuation land could exist as small as a single point or expand throughout the entire endless primordial space. Although Lord Mo Man admitted that his current strength was insufficient to refine the fluctuation land, he had finally discovered a possible method. He believed that the simplest path for him was to comprehend a highest-level power of the world in addition to his primordial fluctuation Tao. Because he had perceived the entire endless primordial space as waves for countless epochs. His understanding of the world was extremely profound, giving him confidence that this path offered his greatest hope. However, comprehending a power of the world was extremely difficult and might require endless epochs. If he succeeded, the additional highest-level power, combined with the support of the fluctuation land, would greatly increase his strength. Once he mastered the power of the world, he would no longer need Luo Feng's assistance to enter the core of the fluctuation land. After accompanying Lord Mo Man to the fluctuation land, Luo Feng returned to seclusion and continued creating combat techniques. More than 100 epochs later, he successfully completed his 5th combat technique. In the 28th layer of the Abyss of Destruction, his aura surged and quickly reached the level of his main battle avatar. With 5 combat techniques, Luo Feng's entire combat system was complete. Even if he created 1 or 2 more techniques, they would not significantly increase his strength. Having mastered 2 primordial level Daos and possessing a complete set of 5 combat techniques, he had reached another bottleneck, and even the slightest further improvement would be extremely difficult. Starlight was in a similar situation. While the possibility of comprehending a 3rd Dao was extremely slim, remembering that the Abyss of Destruction was one of the 3 poles of the endless primordial space from the perspective of fluctuations, Luo Feng wondered whether his current strength could reach its deepest level. He then took a step through time and space and entered the 29th layer of the Abyss of Destruction. Luo Feng descended to the 29th level of the Destruction World, where he found a vast expanse of dark red, half-melted metallic land. Most of it had melted into slowly flowing metal, while some areas remained solid as metallic islands. The environment was powerful enough to incinerate a world-level primordial life. Yet the metal remained intact, proving its extraordinary quality. Luo Feng initially could not collect the materials because they were connected to the earth. Soon, 20 towering world envoys emerged from beneath the molten land. Their bodies were partially melted, but each possessed an aura no weaker than an ancestor. Since Luo Feng was the first to enter beyond the 28th level, no one knew what awaited him there. He realized that while the first level of the Abyss of Destruction contained 3,000 world envoys, the deeper levels had fewer but increasingly stronger ones. The 20 world envoys attacked immediately, and Luo Feng summoned his transformed realm of life and death. Unlike its former pale cyan form, which mainly strengthened allies and restored energy, the domain was now a fusion of cyan and black, combining two primordial level Daos of life and death and possessing far greater offensive power. It was also part of Luo Feng's clone battle technique, as his power contained spiritual consciousness like countless miniature avatars, allowing the domain to function like a formation. Luo Feng used the domain to isolate the battle from outside observation. More than 100 ancestors had been watching his descent, hoping to learn more about the Abyss of Destruction and the cultivator side's strength. But they could no longer see his battle. Yunmo ancestor regretted this, as she had mastered the highest level power of life and secretly cultivated destructive power after her race had suffered devastating losses. Although she possessed both life and destruction and might barely enter the top 10 at full strength, she recognized that Luo Feng's mastery of two primordial level Daos was far superior. Another mysterious mind-type innate primordial life, hidden within an exotic beast, also believed that Luo Feng was probably the strongest existence of the current era. This being had been born from the spiritual power of countless creatures, existed entirely as spirit, and could experience the emotions and desires of countless beings through countless avatars. Because it never killed or fought anyone, no ancestor or lord had ever detected it. Luo Feng sensed the forces observing him and deliberately concealed his techniques to preserve surprises for future battles. After becoming familiar with the 20 world envoys, he defeated them and left life imprints on the Shadow of Origin. He then collected the most precious materials of the 29th level, equivalent to about 1/10 of its total matter, and concluded that the deeper levels contained increasingly valuable materials. Upon entering the 30th level, Luo Feng immediately deployed the world domain to cover the entire world, once again blocking all outside observation. The ancestors complained that they could no longer see the material composition, the number of world envoys, or other secrets of the deeper levels. Jin Yaoyao and Ming Huang supported Luo Feng's decision to hide the information, while Luo Feng's clone explained that the deeper regions might contain secrets of the Abyss of Destruction that the sharp-eyed ancestors could potentially infer. Luo Feng stated that after completing his investigation, he would leave detailed intelligence in the land of origin for the lords. Jin was especially grateful because, aside from Luo Feng, he was the most interested in the Abyss of Destruction but was currently too weak even to enter the Mountain of Destruction. The Abyss of Destruction did not distinguish between primordial level Daos and highest level powers. It only recognized those who possessed the power of destruction, with stronger destruction allowing deeper exploration. The number of world envoys continued to decline. The 29th level had 20. The 30th had 10, and the 31st had 5. Luo Feng's primary combat avatar had already imprinted the Shadow of Origin of the 31st level and begun collecting its precious materials. The 32nd level contained only 3 world envoys, but each was extraordinarily powerful, with physical strength comparable to Wulin and Ice Mountain Master and explosive power comparable to Sha Zhou. Their attacks greatly weakened the effectiveness of Luo Feng's realm of life and death. The level was shrouded in darkness, while Luo Feng's domain reversed directions, disrupted time and space, and formed a massive blade formation that suppressed the 3 world envoys. One world envoy swallowed countless blade lights with its abyss-like mouth. Another possessed a supple, line-like body that resisted Luo Feng's attacks, and the third directly approached Luo Feng with terrifying destructive power. Fighting 1 against 3. with each opponent stronger than Sha Zhou. Luo Feng was placed under tremendous pressure. He relied on the Blood Crane territory and the realm of life and death to move unpredictably while attacking the supple world envoy. Finally, he used a forbidden technique of the primordial battle technique, blasting apart part of its body and leaving an imprint on the shadow of origin. This was enough to pass the level, as he only needed to disrupt the world envoys and imprint the shadow of origin rather than completely defeat them. Luo Feng was surprised that the 32nd level had already forced him to use the primordial battle technique. Afterward, the three world envoys returned to normal and became extremely docile. Obeying his commands, Luo Feng finally relaxed, as the pressure from the three world envoys had been extremely intense. Neither Starlight nor Sha Zhou had been able to pass the 28th layer. Although Luo Feng was the strongest direct combat expert in the endless primordial space, he had already needed to rely on clever tactics starting from the 32nd layer. There were two ways to seize control of a layer of the destruction world. One was to defeat the world envoy through absolute strength and leave a mark on the shadow of origin. The other was to use clever tactics to evade the world envoy's obstruction and successfully leave a mark. Since Luo Feng was at a disadvantage in the 32nd layer, he had to rely on clever tactics. He also wondered how he would deal with the even more difficult 33rd layer. Instead of immediately exploring deeper, Luo Feng remained on the 32nd layer to reflect on and improve his combat techniques. Based on his previous battles, he worked to correct his shortcomings and frequently used the three world envoys as training partners. After staying there for more than one epoch and collecting the special products of that layer of the destruction world, he finally proceeded to the 33rd layer. When the ancestors and lords learned that Luo Feng had entered the 33rd layer, they were shocked and wondered how many layers the abyss of destruction actually possessed. Normally, when no life entered a layer, they could only see endless, tranquil destructive energy and had no way to observe what was inside. However, when Luo Feng entered, world envoys condensed into existence, causing the destructive energy of that layer to surge and allowing the outside world to glimpse its situation. As soon as Luo Feng entered the 33rd layer, he used his domain to cover the entire layer and isolate all observation. The ancient existences outside could no longer see the battle, but they at least confirmed that the abyss of destruction possessed a 33rd layer. Within the 33rd layer, Luo Feng's realm of life and death completely enveloped the surroundings. Ahead of him, two enormous world envoys were gradually forming. One resembled the giant god emperor in appearance, but was far larger. Its body was covered in pure black scales, and its enormous scale-armored wings blocked out the sky while radiating terrifying power. The other was a gigantic flame avian. When it spread its wings, endless flames covered 1/3 of the entire layer and forcibly burned through Luo Feng's realm of life and death. Luo Feng realized that the destructive power of the 33 layers he had explored was contained within the 34 types of destructive power inside the Mountain of Destruction. Furthermore, the world envoys had now been reduced to only 2. He therefore believed that the abyss of destruction truly had only 34 layers. A hypothesis he had already formed when he was at the Mountain of Destruction and which became increasingly likely as he explored deeper. The two world envoys possessed even more terrifying auras, with each one being powerful enough to rival Luo Feng. They represented two distinct forms of the destructive power of this layer, one dark and one fiery. They also possessed different combat forms. One existed in a matter state, while the other existed in an energy state, which might be related to their respective combat techniques. Since Luo Feng had already comprehended the mysteries of this layer's destructive power in the Mountain of Destruction, he had made various assumptions about how the two world envoys would fight. The flame avian focused on Luo Feng and flapped its wings. Its enormous wings immediately transformed into endless flames that completely engulfed him. Luo Feng frowned slightly as he realized that the flame messenger, like the primordial beast ancestor among the 9 emperors, possessed a physical form that itself functioned as a domain. Once the flame messenger spread its wings, it displayed an extremely powerful domain whose suppressive force was roughly 3 times stronger than Luo Feng's realm of life and death. Under the sweeping flames, Luo Feng's realm of life and death was forced to retreat layer by layer. However, his blood-colored robe and protective energy layer shielded him from the flames. At the same time, the dark messenger, covered in black scales, slightly trembled its wings and instantly appeared before Luo Feng. Its enormous hand, nearly as large as Luo Feng himself, descended directly upon him. Luo Feng was forced back 2 steps. His protective energy layer, protective robe, and the muscular and skeletal structure of his body endured the terrifying force. Only the surface of his skin suffered slight bleeding, while his energy consumption remained minimal. Luo Feng deliberately endured the attack in order to understand his opponent more clearly. Knowing that the more he understood the enemy, the easier it would be to discover its weaknesses. He quickly judged that the Dark Messenger possessed an enormous body, extremely high speed, and strength comparable to his own. Under the suppression of the Flame Messenger's domain, Luo Feng was at a disadvantage when facing it. The Dark Messenger repeatedly pursued Luo Feng. Its enormous body covered nearly half of Luo Feng with every casual movement, while Luo Feng's blade light repeatedly cut into it, leaving wounds across its body. However, with the constant supply of energy from the destruction world, the Dark Messenger instantly recovered completely each time. At the same time, under the Flame Messenger's domain, strands of flame transformed into tiny snakes that wrapped around Luo Feng's limbs and infiltrated every part of his body. Luo Feng felt extremely frustrated, as though he were fighting an opponent of equal strength while being shackled. He could not approach the Shadow of Origin. Luo Feng tried to bypass the Dark Messenger, but under the full-range suppression of the Flame Messenger's domain, he could no longer perform short-distance omnipresence. Whenever he attempted to approach the Shadow of Origin, the Dark Messenger was already there to intercept him. However, in a one-on-one battle, with the support of the Crane Leader's power, Luo Feng's speed would surpass that of the Dark Messenger. Under the suppression of the Flame Messenger's fire domain, his speed was slower than the Dark Messenger's, making it impossible for him to escape. Luo Feng split into 3 avatars, with one retaining 80% of its energy and the other 2 retaining only 10% each. He attempted to approach the Shadow of Origin, but the Dark Messenger could not intercept him without dispersing its power, which would weaken it far more than Luo Feng. The Flame Messenger then rapidly constricted its endless fire domain. Countless flame snakes became increasingly solid and entangled all 3 avatars. The 2 weaker avatars were destroyed, while the main avatar resisted the flame snakes. After recovering to its peak condition, Luo Feng released blade light from his body to tear apart the flame snakes. But they continuously reformed. Each small flame snake possessed strength comparable to an ordinary ancestor, and dozens of them wrapped around Luo Feng, greatly slowing his movement. Luo Feng transformed his physical body into energy and attempted to rush into the billions of shadows of origin. But the flame snakes continued to entangle him. Luo Feng then unleashed the terror of great destruction. Dozens of flame snakes were instantly destroyed by 70 to 80%. And the Flame Messenger's power was reduced by half. However, the energy of the destruction world continuously replenished it, with only 2% of his energy remaining. Luo Feng realized he could no longer continue fighting. He retreated, forcibly breaking through the barriers of time and space and returning to the 32nd level. Although leaving the 33rd level was easy, approaching the Shadow of Origin was extremely difficult. The ancient beings observing the destruction world sensed that the 33rd level had returned to calm and could no longer be probed. They speculated that Luo Feng might have failed, or that he might have succeeded and returned to the 32nd level to collect resources. Successfully exploring the 33rd level would mean that Luo Feng had at least mastered the 32nd level, a feat far beyond the other ancestors and lords, since Sha Zhou, the one closest to Luo Feng in strength, had only mastered the 27th level. Back on the 32nd level, Luo Feng's energy quickly recovered. He analyzed the situation and concluded that both the Dark Messenger and Flame Messenger could rival him. The Dark Messenger specialized in close combat, while the Flame Messenger excelled at domain suppression and restraint. Their cooperation was extremely difficult to deal with, and they also had a continuous supply of energy from the destruction world, making them unafraid of energy consumption. Luo Feng realized that the Flame Messenger's domain was even stronger than that of the primordial Beast Emperor, one of the 9 emperors, making it impossible to escape from directly. However, he believed that the Dark Messenger could still be shaken off. His greatest advantage was that his techniques were more intricate. After contemplating the situation, Luo Feng gradually formed a battle plan. Once he returned to peak condition, Luo Feng entered the 33rd level again. As soon as he arrived, he spread the realm of life and death throughout the surroundings, held the sky-splitting saber, and observed the distant figures of the 2 world envoys. Luo Feng then formed the triple absolute blade array. 30 blade lights flew from his fingers, isolating space and time and severing all energy transmission around the dark messenger. Each blade light contained 1% of Luo Feng's energy, consuming 3% in total. The formation had 3 layers, and even if one layer was damaged, the other 2 could replace it. Luo Feng could also continuously supply it with energy. Its primary purpose was to trap the enemy. The dark messenger was shocked after being trapped inside the blade formation. It violently kicked the formation, but the densely layered blade lights contained powerful life spirituality and dispersed and weakened the impact throughout the formation. Easily resisting the attack, the formation isolated the inside from the outside, severing space-time and energy channels so completely that even causality could not connect through it. At the same time, Luo Feng sensed the appearance of the Shadow of Origin after the 2 world envoys had fully formed. He immediately rushed toward it. The flame messenger once again spread its vast fire domain, restraining Luo Feng with flame snakes. Luo Feng responded by releasing hundreds of blade lights around his body. Each blade light was formed from the combination of bright and dark blade lights. The visible blade lights used the Shadow Saber combat technique to accurately lock onto the flame snakes and relentlessly pursue and strike them until their energy was exhausted. The invisible life-cutting blade light severed the vitality and spirituality of the flame snakes, causing them to become sluggish and greatly weakening their ability to restrain him. Protected by hundreds of blade lights, Luo Feng continued rushing toward the Shadow of Origin. The Dark Messenger, despite possessing a powerful physical body and fierce techniques, remained temporarily trapped within the triple absolute blade array and could not break through its barriers. The Flame Messenger was weaker in direct combat despite its mastery of domains. Although it manipulated the fire domain with all its strength to obstruct Luo Feng, it could only watch helplessly as Luo Feng reached the Shadow of Origin and imprinted his mark within it. The moment Luo Feng completed the imprint, both the Dark Messenger and Flame Messenger returned to calm and submitted to him. Luo Feng felt relieved. He concluded that the 2 world envoys had each specialized in only one aspect of the destroyer power of their level, making their methods relatively narrow. This allowed him to exploit his advantage in complex techniques and succeed despite the unfavorable situation. From the first level, where there had been 3,000 world envoys, to the 33rd level, Luo Feng had observed that the world envoys only used part of the power of their respective worlds. As a result, their methods had certain flaws. However, even with such flaws, neither Starlight nor Sha Zhou had been able to break through the 28th level. This demonstrated that when the disparity in strength was overwhelming, intricate techniques could no longer compensate for it. Luo Feng had succeeded because his strength was comparable to that of the Dark Messenger and Flame Messenger, allowing his sophisticated techniques to play a decisive role. Luo Feng estimated that the 34th level would probably contain only a single world envoy, and that this world envoy should possess all the abilities of the world's power at that level. After considering this, Luo Feng stepped into the next level. At that moment, all forces throughout the endless primordial space sensed the updated situation in the destruction world and understood that Luo Feng had conquered the 33rd level and entered the 34th level. The 34th level of the Abyss of Destruction was a dim, dark land that seemed to have solidified into a single entity. A faint black mist flowed across its surface. This mist represented the materialized essence of boundless grudges and resentment, with every portion of the land consisting of matter that had solidified from those grudges and resentments. At the same time, an extremely majestic figure condensed before Luo Feng. Luo Feng observed the figure and identified it as a world envoy. The figure wore a black cloak, with dark red light flowing across its body and countless cries of living beings contained within it. Its face was hidden beneath the cloak as it looked down at Luo Feng. Luo Feng confirmed that there was indeed only one world envoy on this level. The cloaked world envoy stated that this was the deepest layer of the Abyss of Destruction. Since its birth, it had waited there, and Luo Feng was the first ultimate life form to arrive.